All right, everybody, we are live. Sorry, we're running a couple minutes behind, a couple technical difficulties, but it's to be expected. So, tonight we have a special topic. We are going to talk about cancel culture and the side effects that come from cancel culture. So, quick disclaimer tonight, this is brand new to me, and I am looking to learn from you, just like a lot of you come here to learn from me. I don't know much about this. This is something that I've recently started looking into. And quite frankly, I find it fascinating that it's even a thing. So, as promised, we're going to have our monthly meetup tonight. So, without further ado, let's mention our two guests. So, first, we're going to bring on Mike Powell. Everybody knows him. He's a family and fan favorite. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, always good to be here, Dean. Thanks for having me back.
All right. And along with Mike, it's like peanut butter and jelly. We can't have Mike without having Dr. Magny on as well. Dr. Magny.
What's going on, man? How you doing? Who's the peanut butter and who's the jelly? That's what I want to know.
I'll leave that up for you two to decide.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They both go great on bread, so it's all good.
All right. I'll take that.
So, fellas, we got a tough one tonight. This is something that, like I said, this is not something that I am an expert in. It's something that I am looking to learn from others. And I'm hoping that we can all kind of hash this out and maybe come up with a clear understanding of what exactly it is and how exactly cancel culture works. So I'm going to go to you, Obed, first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about cancel culture and what it means to you?
Yeah, so cancel culture is basically somebody does something that you don't agree with, that you find offensive, and in an effort to show your dismay, you cancel them. So you don't watch them anymore. You tell other people not to patronize that particular business. So whether it's a company that sells soda drinks or something like that, or if it's an actor or an actress or a celebrity or an influencer, it's like you don't patronize their page in an effort to discredit them and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about. That's basically the cancel culture. In general, it's like trying to destroy somebody based on something that was done in the past.
All right. I can dig that. Mike, what's your take on cancel culture?
Dean, I am going to keep it simple for the people and simply say that it is a form of public shaming. So I'm going to keep it simple, stupid. It's a form of public shaming.
Okay. All right. I think that's a pretty good definition.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get my head around what the premise of cancel culture is and what they're looking to accomplish. So I'll go to you, Mike, since you kept it simple. So I'm going to have you talk a little bit more. What do you think the premise is behind cancel culture? And before you answer that, both of you, just know that since none of us are experts on this, there's going to be times throughout this broadcast where I'm going to devil's advocate you. It doesn't necessarily mean that I believe in the position I'm taking. It's just the best way, I think, to examine all sides as we see them. So yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I think, and this is fairly new to me. I had to ask my my wife what she thought about cancel culture and how long has she ever heard of it. And she's a lot more intelligent than I am, and she's a few years younger, and she learned about it maybe a month or two ago. So it's fairly new, and I had to look. I had to look it up and really get a better understanding of it. But I think it's something that's been around for a long time, but over time they call it different things. And this generation has dubbed it, cancel culture. And it's just, I think it's a form of advocacy that I think right now with this generation, which cancel culture is attached to, is a lot of younger folks voicing their opinions about certain thought processes or ideas or things that they feel are not in the best interest of society today.
All right. So I'm going to take your answer and I'm going to bounce it over to Obed. Obed, what's the point of cancel culture?
Well, I think Mike kind of hit it on the head there. I think it's a semantical thing because obviously we're more, I guess you could say, more of a tech savvy generation today. When we're talking about cancel and not patronizing somebody's business or trying to publicly shame someone and everything, it's easier to do it online now. Everyone's got smartphones, everyone's got social media, and so on and so forth. But the idea, if you want to conceptualize it, is nothing new. So I think you mentioned the Montgomery boycotts to change the behavior. So it's like, what is the when we talk about cancel culture, is the goal to just destroy the individual so that we don't see or hear from them ever again? Or is it the goal of us in the effort of doing a cancel culture to change their behavior? And I don't know that that's ever been clearly defined. It would be easy to say, oh, you know what? Somebody did something 10, 15 years ago and they screwed up, so we're going to destroy them. Well, it would be easy to do something like that, right? But if you look at the totality of the circumstances, right? So I'm going to bring it back to policing. If somebody did something that was dumb or stupid from, let's say, in their teens, but since then they've shown and they've progressed and they've not only made up for that, but and then some moving forward. So they've made significant contributions to society, to education, whatever it is. Are we going to just erase everything they've done for, let's just say, the past 20 years because something that they did as a young person when they were 18 or 19? That's something that, it gives me pause. It's just something that we got to think about. So I don't know that I want to say it's a monolithic group that everybody thinks, hey, you know what? If we're talking about canceling so-and-so, we're all about destroying them or whatever it is. It's okay. Maybe somebody said or did something way back in the day that was, either egregious or whatever it is. But, moving forward, have they shown that they've matured and they've grown from that?
Well put. So I have a little, I don't know, a saying, so to speak. I don't know who said it, but I'm just going to say it. I don't believe that anybody is the sum of the worst things that they've ever done, just like I don't believe people are as good as the best thing that they've ever done. We all lie somewhere in between. I know a ton of people, and I know everybody that's in my life, everybody I've ever met has done something that they're not proud of. And I know people that have done some remarkable things that they should be super proud of. But that's not who, on either spectrum, that's not who they are. So, Mike, why don't you kind of speak to that aspect of it? Is cancel culture, is it expecting too much of people?
Yeah, well, I think that it depends upon how you look at it. So I think that if you hold a certain mindset that you're superior to someone based upon their race, their religion, what have you, and you have true hatred in your heart, and coupled with the fact that you hold a position of power, meaning that you can significantly influence somebody's ability to progress in life. If you hold that power and you have this mindset that where you have hate in your heart, then I think that you should be called to the carpet, and you should have to you should have to answer for that thought process if it influences somebody negatively. However, I think that sometimes we mix up emotions with people's ability to freely express themselves. If they have a different belief system than you shouldn't try to publicly shame me because I have a different belief system than you, whether it's based upon your religious beliefs or what have you. I think that we mix, the lines get blurry there, and I think that's the issue with cancel culture.
Ooh, now we're starting to heat up. Mike, you almost had me hitting the Holy Ghost right there, buddy. I love that point you just made. Obed, you want to come? You want?
I don't know how to follow that. Ultimately, it just comes down to choice, right? If somebody has a point of view that I disagree with, but I believe that their point of view is coming from a good place. You know what I'm saying? We all have people who we're friends with that we disagree with on certain ideologies and everything like that. I mean, to use a sports analogy, right? Because I'm always going to bring it back to sports. Me being a Miami Hurricanes fan, if I have a friend of mine who's a Florida State Seminoles football fan, am I just gonna like, you know what, we can't because you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's
They
like
cancel. They cancel.
you know what I mean? And one of the problems, that we have that you see going on today is, and for those who's gonna watch this, Dean likes to play this particular scene in the movie Lean on Me, and it's one of my favorite scenes that I've seen. And just because we disagree on something, as long as it's not coming from a place where you're trying to oppress me, marginalize me, or anything like that, and it's not nefarious, we can disagree all day long moving forward. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, if there's somebody who's an acquaintance or somebody who I know, and they've got a certain ideology that is coming from a nefarious reason, I don't have to associate myself with that person. I can just step away or distance myself from that person. And I understand, and Mike, I thought you brought a really good point about the emotions, and I think the emotions get a lot of people. And me being an emotional intelligence expert, it's sometimes people struggle with that self-regulation of their emotions.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If something that you do or say or act, turns me off in a certain way, for me, I got to ask myself, why is that? Is there something that I'm trying to overcome that I'm struggling with? And I know that's getting way, way deep in the weeds. But, at the end of the day, if we're disagreeing moving forward, or we're disagreeing because we want to get to the same point, you just prefer to go left and I prefer to go to the right, or whatever that is, we can get to that point.
I got you, Mike. Mike, jump in. I can tell that you want to get in. Go ahead.
No. So let me just bring up just a short story that I experienced, and this goes back to emotional intelligence, and I think it's important. So this is a true story. So I go into a local coffee shop. I'm standing in line waiting to be taken care of, so I can have my caffeine for the morning. So I walk up to the to the young lady working behind the register, and just right from the jump, attitude, just appeared to just didn't appear to want to deal with me. So if I didn't have the sense enough to say to think about it bigger, right? To look at the bigger picture, and if I walked away with that experience, then I could have easily gone back, gone online, wrote a horrible, a horrible narrative on the internet that would have blown out of proportion, and I didn't get the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is this: what I did was I evaluated the situation. I stepped to the side, waited for my coffee, and in the middle, in that interim, I evaluated the next person that came to the counter. I don't have to. You can clearly see. I have a nice tan, right? So the next individual that goes to the counter is a white male. So I watched the interaction with this white male and this young lady. Guess what, folks? The same thing. So if I would have took that experience and walked away and said she didn't like me because of the color of my skin, feeling that, going away and putting something online that wasn't true, wasn't necessarily true. If you look at the bigger picture, and I think sometimes with this cancel culture, I think that's what's happening in some of these and some of these situations is people are not looking at the bigger picture, and their emotions are getting too wrapped into their thought process, and it clouds how they see things. Not every situation, but a lot of times, if you step back and evaluate the situation, sometimes your thought process can change. So I just wanted to share that story about emotional intelligence.
All right. So the chat's lighting up right now. So let's see what we got.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I think I've got the best 10 in this group. I just wanted to declare
that. On that note, I'm going to take a big leaping bound over that comment, and I'm going to go right to the chat section here. So, we got John that says cancel culture is a consequence of a bad act. Bad acts have consequences, but there should be a statute of limitations. Thank the good Lord YouTube wasn't around when we were in college. As an adult, you shouldn't necessarily be held accountable for things you've said as a kid. Well said. Obed, what do you think about that comment?
That was a mic drop. I literally can't even follow that up. I mean, you're absolutely right. We've all done, and Lord knows I'm the poster child of doing dumb things and saying dumb things and doing things that I look back, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? But if I were to be judged by that, then would I be here today? Thankfully somebody didn't give up on me, and I had chances and had opportunities to redeem myself. And this is why the brain doesn't fully develop until you're in your early 20s for a reason. So you expect teenagers. That's why if you get insurance when you're 16, it's like $8 million, because you expect young boys to speed up and down the street and do some dumb things. That's just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, no, I thought that was well said. Well said.
All right, Mike, what say you?
I share those sentiments. I mean, I agree. I mean, there definitely has to be some separation. I mean, like I said, I think we as human beings, I think the goal of life is to mature and grow and learn from your experiences. Whether if those are bad experiences, hopefully you learn from those experiences. And I think that if you don't give people an opportunity to do that, then and you just you jump on them like hotcakes, then I think that we're not progressing as a society, and I think no one needs to be judged on their past if it's significantly removed, because you need to give folks an opportunity to grow and mature. So great point.
All right. So the next one is, when we stop listening to each other, doors close. Amen. Amen. And that's exactly what's happening right now. People are yelling from either side of an argument. And again, you pick your argument. Doesn't matter what the argument is. It can be politics. It can be about the acts of, we're going to talk a little bit about Ice Cube later on. Ice Cube has a meeting with the Trump administration to maybe hash out some things. Maybe, who knows what his motivation is, but the instant a lot of Black America found out that he had this meeting, a lot of people have instantly turned on a guy who has clearly been anti-establishment his whole entertainment career for the most part. So, gentlemen, you want to jump on that up real quick?
Doctor?
Oh, I love number one, the T-ball. Dean just like, oh, let's throw this grenade in here, and then pour the gasoline in there real quick. So I think the Ice Cube situation is probably the best example that you can come up with, to be honest with you, right? And so,
oh, you're gonna get the full screen for this. Go ahead, brother.
Oh man, you're gonna put me? Okay, all right.
Yep.
So here, and to your point, Ice Cube's not a establishment kind of guy. And so his perspective is, hey, can we get a contract for Black Americans? Because, since slavery and Jim Crow and et cetera, there's never been any reparations or payback or anything like that. So I'm sitting here telling you, and I'm not speaking for Ice Cube, but his perspective is, hey, it doesn't matter what political party you're coming from. Clearly, no one's ever had the interests of Black folks in mind. So I'm going to work with anybody who's willing to sit down and maybe hash some things out. He's not saying he's pro one group or, pro another group or anything like that. So it's cool to disagree with his approach if that's, your prerogative. But the idea that you're just going to cancel him and, just shut him out for simply saying, hey, I'll sit down with a side, I don't know that that's the best approach. You know what I mean? This is going back to what I was saying before. He's not saying he's pro any group. Anybody who knows anything about Ice Cube knows he's not pro establishment anything. But for the cause that he's fighting for, it is a noble one. And for him to say, hey, if one group is willing to at least extend an olive branch, I mean, again, this is going back to is it for nefarious reasons or not? That could be argumented. That could be litigated, I should say. But again, his point is that I don't care if you got a D at the end of your name, an I or an R. What are you going to do to help me and my people out?
Mike, what do you think?
No. Obed brought. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. He brought up a lot of good points, and that's the sad part about. That's the sad part about society today is that if I express myself, and again, you don't have to agree with my thought process. You don't have to agree with anything that comes out of my mouth, but we should be able to sit down and have a conversation. And regardless of who I, what side I fall under, whether it's the right or the left, we can still have conversations with it without being outcasted. And I think that's the unfortunate part. I'm even those folks that I don't necessarily agree with their thought process, I'm still willing to sit down and have a conversation with them and have a discussion. And it's a difficult discussion. And he had some legitimate concerns that he felt like he has a very big platform. And if he can help have those conversations, then I think he should be able to have those conversations without being outcast. And I think that's the unfortunate part. So kudos to Cube and to other folks like that.
I'm going to come back to you, Obed.
I think that you should be allowed to express yourself without being thrown into the fire.
Obed, I know you want in, then I'm getting in on this too. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's just real quick, and I think what the other aspect of this is that Q did show some leadership to say, hey, this is what leaders do. They step up and they talk to maybe somebody on the other side that they don't agree with, and we need more of that today. You know what I mean? We got too many people talking past each other and nobody's sitting down, at least trying to work something out moving forward. Is any of this going to be easy? Absolutely not. Nobody's expecting anything to happen overnight. And that's the other thing, is that these things do take time. And again, we'll see what happens. But, again, that's what leadership looks like, taking action, not sitting in your silo and then yelling from the other side. And then that's that.
100%. So I'm going to jump in on this myself. So, Obed, you touched upon it. Mike, you set us on the path. Obed took us a little farther. I'm going to bring us home with this. And by bringing us home, I'm going to take us back to when we were all 6 years old. We were all in kindergarten when we were 6 years old, right? I still believe the best premises to base the way we lived our life is based on what we were taught in sixth grade. When we were 6 year old in kindergarten. If you have a problem with somebody, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to just haul off and hit them? Are you supposed to just never deal with them again? Are you supposed to try to have a conversation with them? Mm-hmm. That's the whole premise of Supply the Why. That's what we're doing. That's why we get together for our monthly meetups, to talk through these difficult beef stew, thick conversations. And that's what Ice Cube was clearly trying to do. What his final motivations are, I have no idea. I have no idea what his motivations are. Just like you guys said, I couldn't tell you what his motivations are. And quite frankly, I don't really care. I'm impressed by the fact that he was willing to put himself out there and have a conversation with somebody that clearly he doesn't agree with, clearly that the vast majority of the community that Ice Cube belongs to, the Black community, is not a fan of President Trump. And this guy said, you know what? There's a huge disconnect. I'm gonna extend my olive branch. I'm gonna offer to have a conversation with him, and I'm gonna figure out where we go from here. Because what's going on now isn't working for us. And it's really, I think things could be working out better for the president, clearly. And that's what he's thinking. And that's why he wanted to have that conversation. So that's just my opinion on that. So we're going to get back to the chat. We got a few other comments here. So we're going to go to J.R. Sully, who says, emotional intelligence is a factor that so many people don't talk about. Kudos to you, sir. All right. We got a big comment here. This is from a guy who is an academic. And so Nick says, can you build on culture and how it pertains to virtue signaling? I think the process behind canceling someone is intended to be for a good cause, but oftentimes it seems to bring more harm than good. It seems there's generally a mob mentality. Good word there, a mob mentality. We're going to get to that. behind the cancelers who find their opinion more compelling because their ideology leads them to think it follows a moral code that other person is lacking, when sometimes it's dependent on the canceler's interpretation rather than the person who was canceled's intentions. That is like, that's like the college version of a Dr. Seuss right there. That is like, what a tongue twister.
That's excellent.
All right, so Nick, 100%. You know, and again, I'm just gonna simplify that for those who just got tired of hearing my voice there. So the long and short is, he's saying that the mob mentality, which is, it seems to happen a lot, where we just flock to people that we agree with, and we just tend to gain up like a pack of wolves on the single person that we disagree with. And there's all kinds of content out there. I shared a video on Supply the Why last night that talked about cancel culture, and it actually showed a professor at a college that made a comment that was taken out of context, and he was confronted by a ton of students outside his class, and it got really ugly. So that was mob mentality of people that were not in power. So what they do, they gained up to reverse the power role against a professor who clearly has power over the students, and it turned ugly. So great comment, question, and all that there, Nick. All right. Is cancel culture a product of society not being able to have difficult conversations? Ooh. Is cancel culture a product of society not being able to have difficult conversations? That is a fantastic question from a very beautiful lady. So
no bias there or anything.
Yeah, no bias at all there. So I'm gonna go to Obed first, since he's got so much to say. Go ahead, Obed.
I'm gonna say yes and no, because again, challenging the status quo is nothing new. Challenging the status quo of anything, challenging something that you don't agree with, is something that's inherent in all of us. This has been going on since the beginning of time. So that's on one end. On the other end, and again, you don't have to look far. All you have to do is turn on the TV. I mean, between this pandemic, between civil unrest with, policing and police reform, and this election cycle, people are more stressed out than ever before, and people are super hypersensitive. So merely saying a word out of context, like you just mentioned, Dean, and can set someone off. So whether it's boycotts, whether it's, we live in a capitalistic society, people have a choice to say, you know what, I don't agree with this, I can step away. The going above and beyond, again, that's, what are we trying to do now? Is this in the case that you just talked about, the professor, was the intention to get this man fired? Was it the intention to get him to apologize? This issue, unfortunately, is way more complex, and I don't know that we can oversimplify it. It's a great question, but that's a loaded question that I don't think there's a simple answer for.
Of course, it's a loaded question. This is difficult conversations. It's supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you take a stab at it. What do you think?
No, Heidi, you posed a great question. Thanks for asking. And I think Obed brought up a fantastic point. Is, what's the end result? Like, what's the goal? What are we looking for? As far as shaming somebody or canceling them out. What's the ultimate goal? Is the ultimate goal to educate? Is the ultimate goal to fire? Is the ultimate goal to public shame? Like, what's the end result here? Because I think that just because you cancel somebody out doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is fixed. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches. I mean, there's a bigger problem that's going on. So I think just because you cancel someone out, or an organization or what have you, doesn't necessarily mean that we've fixed the problem. It's going to continue to perpetuate until we figure out what the end goal is. And I think that's one of the big questions that we all have to figure out.
All right. This is heating up, and it's going exactly the way I planned it. I'm going to go to, we got 2 other great comments here. Actually, we got more great comments. It's lighting up. Awesome topic. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Dave. Dave is had 36 sacks in 1 season in high school. And so, yeah, I figured I'd throw that out there. I'm pretty impressed by that even to this day.
Kudos to you.
Yeah. So what else do we have? We have people aren't conversating anymore. They're living through 120 character tweets. Social media mob mentality. 100%.
Yep.
And we got one other comment, and it's, do you think that social media exacerbates cancel culture?
100%.
Oh, okay. So who gave Jennifer a can of gasoline and told them to put out the fire? That's what I want to know with that question. Mike, go ahead. You go. Actually, Obed, you go first. You seem like you want in. Go.
Yeah. So Jennifer brings up so that's a great point. So with social media, so now you don't have to talk to somebody in person. You don't have to confront them. You don't have to make eye contact with them. It's easy to grab your phone and send a tweet, and then everyone's a tough guy. Everyone's a keyboard tough guy or tough gal. Okay, not gender specific here. And so yeah, it's easy to write something in a bunch of characters and just throw it out there, and then that's it. And so what happens when you put somebody in a room and they've got to confront someone? Well, you feel those uncomfortable, I don't know if I want to say something because I might offend. Like, you're forced to use those emotional intelligence skills if you have them, or if you don't have them, it's going to show itself. Again, you can disagree with somebody with something, but it's different when you do it in person versus when you do it over the phone. That detachment, that's why everybody is, tough these days, so to speak. And you have the trolls coming out left and right. And, for those who don't know, Dean's a pretty big guy. It's easy for somebody to go on Twitter and say, yeah, whatever, you're done, blah, blah. But I'm going to tell you right now, you better be 6'9". When you see him in person, if you're gonna talk some trash, So so Jennifer's point, that is definitely a substantial contributor.
All right, Mike, come on in. The water's fine.
No, yeah, the water feels good. I think that social media exacerbates cancel culture 100%. And to bring up some of the points that Obed made, what would your thought process change, or would you carry yourself differently if you put yourself in front of me? Like, would you still say those same things if you weren't behind a keyboard 20 miles away? And to the other point is, and not trying to advocate violence, but years ago, when politicians used to have disagreements, what did they do? They used to have duels with pistols, right? They used to, all right, I challenge you to a duel, walk 20 paces, turn around and fire a shot. Like we obviously don't do that now. But to get to my point of it's easy to say things when you're at home, behind a keyboard, and you're speaking to somebody 20 miles away, 5 miles away. And that the possibilities of confronting this person are slim to none. So no doubt about it that the internet exacerbates, social media exacerbates this whole cancel culture movement. And again, if you are trying to right a wrong, and you feel that it's just because somebody is being discriminated against, hey, 100%, I'll back you all the way. But there's a way to do it, and there's a process to do it, and it has to be an end goal. There has to be education behind it, because you can, if I disagree with you and I'm wrong, what good is it trying to public shame me? I think it would be better if you educated me, as opposed to public, engaging in public shaming.
I love it. So I'm going to throw this out there. This is a saying that I've said quite a bit. Some of the people in the chat that know me have heard me say this. So I'm going to share it with all of you. The world was a better place when people had to be conscious of the fact that your words just might get you punched dead in your face. So think about that. Because now, like everybody said, people aren't concerned about that because everybody's doing it through a keyboard. But back in the day, before there was all this social media and keyboard mess, when you wanted to have this kind of a conversation, you had to be in front of somebody for the most part. If you were on the phone with them, it's somebody that you obviously knew, and you knew you were going to see them at some point. You were going to have to ante up if you went too far. But once that went away, it's created this whole thing where, like Obed said, the keyboard warriors, keyboard tough guys and gals have they've completely lost sight of the fact that you might have to really answer for your words at some point. So I have a special treat for Obed. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cue this up. So Obed brought up. So everybody that's at home, I just want to warn you, this is the scene that Obed was talking about earlier from one of my favorite movies of all time called Lean On Me. And there's a guy named John in the chat. Him and I have talked about the scene quite a bit. So if you have children within earshot, just know there's some language that I don't necessarily I don't condone, but it's a powerful scene, and I think it plays to what we're talking about here. So I want everybody to check this out. And at the end of it, we'll jump back on and we'll kind of talk about the scene.
You see this yet? You see this yet? You see this yet? You know, all of your shit comes down on my head.
Oh, Frank, look,
No, you let me talk. It's like you're a big bird with radar, and I'm tired of getting hit.
is this my fault?
This is nothing. I've got union lawyers threatening me, and there's talk of a walkout.
Well, let them. They're not teaching anything down there anyway.
Then it's your job to do
Not
something
one
about
of them
it.
has a personal stake in that school, Frank. Not one.
The fire chief was just here. He says it's illegal to bar those doors. Mrs. Barrett is organizing a parents group to try to get you removed, since you insulted them at that meeting the other night when you suggested that they get off welfare.
Oh, I didn't mean
Because the
that.
fact is, quite a few of them need it.
Look, I wasn't talking to all of them, Frank. Now, look, you came and recruited me, man. You disappoint me, brother. You disappoint me.
The disappointment here is you.
Me?
Yes.
Look, you know who I am. You know me 30 years. You knew what I would do. You know how
Nigga,
I
can
operate.
you keep quiet? The fact is, you're screwing up. You're alienating everybody. Look at you. You have no life. Your wife left you. I ought to walk out on you myself.
Well, go ahead. Bail the hell on out.
But I said I would back you up.
That's what you said, Frank. That's what you said.
Brother, I will go through the fire with you. But you are not taking care of business. This shit you're pulling now, you're just gone plain loco. Now, you suspend Darnell. What the hell was that?
Darnell is symptomatic of the disciplinary
He
problem
is
that
a
we're having in
good,
this entire
strong,
system.
young black teacher. So he dumped that desk right on top of your head. Well, right on. Good for him. You will reinstate that man, you hear? And then you fire Mrs. Elliott. Why? Because she didn't want to kiss your ass. Well, I wouldn't either. How about that?
Mrs. Elliott has an ego.
Yeah, well, you lost the best teacher we had. We couldn't get her back now if we wanted to.
I don't have time for Mrs. Elliott's problem.
Well, you better make time.
We are being crucified by a process that is turning blacks into a permanent underclass here, Frank. A permanent underclass. No, see, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody. Mrs. Elliott's missionary zeal about Mozart has nothing to do with our problem. Nothing. What good is Mozart going to do a bunch of children who can't go out and get a job?
Joe, your personal battles are going to cost us the war. Worry about the test scores.
What the hell you think I'm worried about, Frank?
End of discussion. Debate is over. You will write a formal apology.
I will what?
A formal apology for your treatment of Mrs. Elliott and Darnell and for your vicious and thoughtless insult to the women of this community. You will kowtow. You will step and fetch.
Frank, if you think you can
Get
make me...
used to it. It's the way of the world. If you're so hot on discipline, then goddamn it, start by accepting mine. Because contrary to popular opinion, I'm the head nigger in charge. Come on, let's get something to eat.
You really think you bad, don't you?
Whew. That scene gets me every single time.
heat, fire. You can't do that on Twitter. You can't have that conversation on Facebook. You can't have that conversation talking.
Man, I mean, I must have seen that scene. It's got to be 100 times I've seen that scene, and it is. Oh man, I mean, I got the chills right now. I mean, that was so believable and so real and so relevant to what we have going on right now. So I felt the need to make sure that Obed, I got you, man. You brought it up, and for people that haven't seen it, I hope that again, there was some language in there that I don't condone, throwing around the N-word a little bit, but I think if you just got the power of that scene and to have such a heated disagreement between two different people, both passionate about their sides, and at the end, come on, man, let's go get something to eat.
Yep.
And that's how it should be.
You think you back. You think you back. No.
Oh, man, that was something else. So we're moving. Go ahead, Obed.
No, I'm really glad you showed that scene, and I hope if anybody has not seen it, I'd recommend it. I mean, that's what we need today in our country. That kind of passion, absolutely. That kind of dialogue, but understanding that, hey, I see you, you see me, we hear each other. Let's work this out.
That's what's up. Mike, how you feeling?
No, I got the goosebumps. I mean, that's definitely a powerful scene, and I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But that particular part hits the nail right on the head. That we can be passionate, we can have disagreements, we don't have to agree with each other all the time, but at the end of the day, we still love each other. So that's what that scene was all about, and it was powerful.
100%. So I'm going to switch gears, gentlemen. I'm going to jump back in the chat. Again, if you're watching, if you just tuned in, this is Difficult Conversations by Supply the Why. I'm here with Dr. Obed Magny and Mike Powell for our monthly meetups, and we are talking about cancel culture and the ripple effects that it has. So Andy Stone asks, do people with that mob mentality feel better after they get someone or something canceled? Or do they just move on to the next victim? At what point did it become so hard for them to have respect, agree or disagree, and move on? 100%. And Andy, I got to say, with the way things are looking right now, in my opinion, they get something or someone canceled, and they that's exactly what they do. They move on to the next. I actually think it's empowering to them. Some might even say, if you've ever run the streets, Obed, Mike, you guys might have heard this from back before we were cops. It's like shooting dope without a needle, getting high on a power trip, right? You know what I mean? Like they're just getting so high off that power that it just, So that's something to consider there. So we're going to move on to Ben. Ben says, Andy, sadly, they don't care. It's moral superiority they feel, and it doesn't matter the consequences because they feel they're correct. Facts and other people's opinions be damned. So I just want to speak to Ben's comment real quick. Personally, I would feel better about the cancel culture if it was fact-based. So if there was something where it's like it was indisputable, like, for example, somebody else that was canceled was R. Kelly. All right? I love R. Kelly's music. I can't lie. You know what I mean? I love his music. I may have a kid because his music was so good. You know what I mean? His music was unbelievable. And it just does something to people. So R. Kelly, his music's unbelievable, but what he did as a predator is reprehensible. And you can't hear an R. Kelly song on the radio because of what he did with dating underage girls and all some of the madness he was accused of doing that ended up they were able to prove some of it. Like that I have less of a problem with because it was a pattern and it had continued for years and whatnot. Anybody have a feeling one way or the other on that?
No. I'll touch upon what you said. There were a lot of babies made to R. Kelly's music, so you're not the only one, Dean. But with that being said, you made a valid point, Dean, in regards to if it's a continued thought, if it's a continued behavior, that's different. That's a continued behavior, meaning you have not learned from your mistakes. You have not matured. You have not grown. And if you can't mature and grow, then ultimately you ultimately you ultimately dig your own grave. To be honest with you, so I'll leave it there.
Obed, what do you think?
Yeah, this is going back to what I was mentioning earlier. Is it ultimately comes down to choice. So if a radio station feels like, hey, having our name associated with this man is bad for our brand, they have that choice to, drop them from their airwaves. Now, that's not to say that you can't go on satellite radio. You can still go on Pandora and get R. Kelly radio. So he might be canceled from, I guess you could say, AM, FM, but he's not really canceled on satellite radio, or satellite radio. I guess you could say, podcast streams, whether it's iHeart or whatever that is. So, again, ultimately, it just comes down to the decision of the consumer or the customer or the client. To your point, we unfortunately go with emotion first, and like you said, facts and science and research last. You had the 5 kids from New York City in Central Park that all got locked up because they were being accused of a heinous crime, when it turned out the research and the science showed that they had nothing to do with it, to what happened to that woman. And then you had, people coming out saying they need to get the death penalty and so on and so forth. And to your point, what if that did happen to them? What if they all did get the death penalty only to find out, oops, we made a mistake? So I could go on, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't know. We only got so much time. So
No, we're doing good on time. So I'm going to hit another comment here. So Aaron had said the problem with cancel culture is a lot of times it's personal. What offends one person doesn't necessarily offend others. And Kevin says the key to me is at the end they're going for dinner. He must be talking about, we're going back to the scene here. I once told my brother that we were not always going to agree on certain things, but no matter what, I'll always love you no matter what. Very nice, Kevin. That's awful hallmarky of you. So I went to school with Kevin, so I can tease him a little bit, but because I would expect the same in return. That's how we do each other in the town I grew up. All right. So Ben is replying to Heidi. Says Heidi Jenkins, yes. As I replied to Andy, it's moral superiority that they feel. Many people who don't like something, they don't watch, eat, or do whatever it is. But then there are people who don't believe that anyone should be able to partake in whatever it is that they individually don't like, to each their own, but don't tell me what I can and cannot do. All right, Ben, I like that you're getting, standing up right there. So I got to ask you guys. So cancel culture, it's been a thing for a little while now. What is the first actual time you realize that, like, wow, this is for real, and this is not going away anytime soon? So Obed, when's the first time you noticed cancel culture?
I don't know that it was like one particular incident, but I do know a few years ago back, I just found it kind of odd and peculiar on college campuses when a lot of professors would, if they had an opinion about something or if they were teaching something, there was a lot of rumblings of, hey, Professor so-and-so said something and we disagree. So we're all going to walk out and we're going to start having protests and everything. I'm just like, I'm sorry, did I miss something? I thought college was where you have those differences of opinions. And then, you form arguments that, advocate for your side, or you try to look at things holistically. And that is the point. That is growth. It's, if you're going to the gym to work out because you're trying to get bigger muscles or you're trying to get leaner, there's a lot of work that's involved. So that's kind of where I got when I saw that. And then, comedians, and we all love Dave Chappelle and some other comedians. And then it was just comedians were getting canceled. I was like, is this a thing? And of course, we're all busy. I'm just like, this must be, this too shall pass. I'm thinking it's like a little, maybe a little fat, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a little thing that's just going to come and go. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize it was, this significant. And, a lot of unintended consequences. I mean, I can get it. I understand some people's perspectives, like, hey, you know what, this person did this a long time ago, but nothing's changed since then. I get that.
The whole pattern of behavior thing we spoke about.
Right. But because, a couple of years ago, to answer your question.
All right, Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I think that, thinking about it now, I think that I've always understood that it's always been around, but I think it really hit me when they were talking about trying to get rid of Paw Patrol. I mean, Paw Patrol, Dean. My son loves Paw Patrol, so that really hit me because he loves it so much, and I didn't think it was justified. So at that particular time, that really hit me hard when I had to think about breaking the news to him that there would be no more Paw Patrol. But good thing it didn't happen.
There's no limit to this. It just seems like it just kind of takes on a life of its own. And
Obed, I see you laughing, but it's true. It's true.
Hey, they canceling Puppy Patrol, Paw Patrol, whatever you call it, man. It's real out here in these streets, y'all. It's real.
Man,
Puppy Patrol getting canceled out here, man.
So if I could share another quick story,
please do.
That I'm glad that I think I've always had like an older mind. What do you call that? Old soul, right? I think I've always had an old soul. So if I could just share a story from years ago when I used to work a cruiser, I was sitting in my cruiser. I think I was doing a report, typing a report on my laptop at the time. So I'm sitting there and I see this older gentleman. I mean, this was maybe 12 years ago, a little longer. And this older gentleman, he's coming towards my cruiser and I can see him and he's got a smile on his face. And I'm like, wow, I don't know this guy. I wonder what he's so happy about. So at that particular time, he was probably about 70 around there. So he continued to walk towards my car and he got a little closer, maybe within 10 feet. And he looks in my cruiser through the window and we're looking at each other. And he's like, oh, hey, I'm sorry. I thought you were that other colored fella. So, and again, right then and there, if I didn't think about, if I didn't think about the bigger picture, right? This guy's 70 years old. In his time, at his time, during his time when he grew up, colored was something that was common. Everybody was using it, and I knew that, and I knew that at years ago that was the terminology that folks were using in regards to black people. So, and he again, I just sensed that there was no hatred in his heart when he said it. He truly, that's the terminology he used. And we looked at each other and I said, no. I said, oh no, you must be talking about a different officer. He's like, yeah. I'm sorry. I we talk all the time. So he starts telling me the story. But I feel like if I didn't have that thought process back then years ago, I could have taken that a totally different way. My right emotional intelligence, what we talk about a lot is, that's part of it, is having that emotional intelligence to evaluate the situation a little deeper. Because just because somebody says something, I'm not saying that terminology, it certainly wouldn't be acceptable today, particularly if you're younger. But knowing his age and at the time he grew up, I'm like, that was normal for him to say. So, and I keep going back to the point of emotional intelligence, because I think that if we allow our emotions to take over because we interpret something that is said to be against what you believe in, I think it does a lot of damage to progress and maturity and to growth and to education. So I think that's what folks need to really, really think about going forward if we are to progress as a society.
Mike, bravo. So I'm going to jump in real quick. Then I'm going to go to you, Obed, and we're going to be wrapping up shortly thereafter. So really quick, two quick things. Mike, you touched on something that was so important. And if you listen to this, if you take nothing home, you have to think about the context in which whatever's being said is being framed. So in Mike's case with that older gentleman, you're right. in his generation, that was actually the kind thing you said to somebody of color. And I'll give you an example of that. My grandmother is in her mid-90s. And guess what she calls black people? Colored. She doesn't like black. She told me that the term black is negative, and then she went into a monologue about how if you think about everything that's associated with black, it's negative, it's dark, it's and who am I to tell her? She's in her mid-90s. She's seen things that we can't even imagine. So if my grandmother feels that way and she's been through some horrible stuff, who am I to argue with that? So just want to throw that out there. Obed, I'm going to go to you. You got about we got about 4 minutes left, gentlemen. I can't believe how an hour's gone by. Obed, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, no, context is everything. I mean, it literally is everything. To Mike's point, I shared a story earlier today about a call for service where, I had somebody yell and scream at me for like 20 minutes and MF me up and down and all that good stuff. But never once did I even get close to losing my cool because I understood where this person was coming from. This person was coming from a place of trauma and hurt. And because, the uniform, when we wear it, it represents the government. And, this person was expressing their feelings towards me. Of course, I was the whipping board, but I wasn't going to get into an argument or I wasn't going to fight this person because it was a me versus them. It was hey, this person's hurt and wants to be heard. This person wants to be acknowledged. They want their feelings and their trauma to be acknowledged. And when you understand that, again, going back to the emotional intelligence and the context piece, and just like with the scene that you just played there, Dean, when you understand that full picture, you're going to be better for it. And again, we live in a culture today where instant gratification is everything. Everybody wants the solutions to everything yesterday and last week. It's like, oh, we got this problem. Let's just throw this thing at it. It'll fix it right away. It's just like, no. Sometimes relationships, hey, look, I don't have any babies. I ain't got no kids. So R. Kelly didn't get to me like he got to y'all. But you know what I'm saying? Relationships take work. It takes work. I can tell you that. And I'm not married. You know what I'm saying? So, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you have, whether it's family or, your spouse or, your neighbors or whatever it is. But if you guys if you're working towards something meaningful, it's going to take everybody's working together to make those things happen. And from a foundation of love, trust, and, understanding each other. Can't do that on Twitter.
No, you definitely can't. Not 120 characters or less.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Is that kind of like the same as when people think, they watch CSI and then when they report something to a police station, they think that we're supposed to be able to solve every crime within 60 minutes, including commercial breaks? Is it the same as that?
You don't count the commercials, so it's 47 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if it was the same thing. It's amazing when that happens and somebody's like, oh, I think the person left fingerprints on that blade of grass. Why don't you pull, fingerprint that grass? And,
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't have the hemoglobin 5 million that can fit everything from you don't have those? I saw it on CSI yesterday. Come on.
Hey, Obed, you're canceled. All right, for not having that.
Yeah.
So, all right, fellas, we're down to about a minute left. Give your shout outs. 20 seconds are left. Go ahead, Mike. If you got about 20 seconds to give a shout out, anybody want to say hello to? Any projects?
No. Same stuff as last time. I hope everyone continues to stay safe and be well and stay Rona free. And if you don't agree with anything that I've said on Dean's show tonight, do not cancel me out. Do not cancel me out.
Well said. Obed, 20 seconds. What do you got?
You know what? Just, again, thank you for having me on here. I'm glad everybody, participated in the chat. It's always a blessing to have these conversations. And, hopefully we're setting the example of what it looks like to have these uncomfortable conversations and still hey, did you die?
Right. I'm good. I just checked my pulse. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm all right. I no scars. I'm all right. I'm good. So, yeah.
So on that note, Folks, that's the end of another great episode of Difficult Conversations by Supply the Why. Check us out on Facebook at Supply the Why. Check us out on our YouTube channel, Supply the Why. And if you have any questions, topics that you want to hear on the show, supplythewhy@gmail.com. Everybody, good night, and we'll see you next week.
All right.